everybody and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to be doing an update on my Lithops seedlings, which you can see there in the centre of the screen. I transplanted these Lithops back in July 2020 and they were about a year old then. Now it's 5 months later, so they're about a year and a half now. And I'm doing this update because I had a request to do this video. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do it now because they're now starting to go into the phase where they'll start to absorb their leaves, and by the time you come around to next May or June, the leaves would have shrunk so much and they would have consumed them that it would be time to start watering again. So this is how they're looking now. They've all survived and they're all doing really well. And I'll put a picture up on screen to give you a comparison of when I first put them into this pot in July of this year. They haven't grown too much, but you can definitely see they have grown a lot since the photo. And I remember pointing this pink one out here. It looked a little bit dishevelled, and that's doing really well now. So there it is, you can see it's looking nice and plump. And they've actually gone through one shedding phase already. So you can see the remnants of the old leaves around the edges of that Lithops there. So this was the last one to complete that stage. And it was looking a little bit tight, so I had to loosen it up a little bit to help it stretch out of the old leaves. Since I did that, it really excelled and it popped right out. So here's another look here. If I just put the tool, I can now go in and loosen that all off now. So I'll be taking that off. So to give you an idea of scale, the pot that they're in is actually 6 centimetre diameter, and the largest Lithops, which I've just measured now, this one here, this one is 11 millimetres across in diameter, so 1.1 centimetres. But the main thing is they survived the transplanting process, so these won't be getting any more water now till about May or June of next year. So when it comes round to next year, at the end of April, I will start to begin to think about watering my Lithops, but I'll really wait until about May or even June. And when you go to water your Lithops, just watering it even just once a month would be sufficient. But it just depends on the weather and where you are located in the UK. So here in the UK we have a lot of dull grey rainy days, and that's the days you don't want to be watering a Lithops plant. So you need to wait for a brighter, clearer, more drier day than usual to give your Lithops a watering. So take note of the weather. So if there's a few days of bad weather, you know not to be watering your Lithops because it won't be able to dry out in time. So I don't know what any of the varieties of these are because they were just random seeds that I'd found amongst the soil of one of my other Lithops plants. So as I've just mentioned, they won't be getting any water now until next May or June, and that applies to here in the UK. I'm based in England, so that's the watering and care needs that I follow based on where I live. If you live in a different area and you're in a different climate, you're in an arid environment or somewhere like that, your watering schedule will be a lot different to mine. So in their natural environment, Lithops are native to South Africa and Namibia, and they're designed to survive severe drought, and their leaves store a lot of water. So in their natural habitat, they would actually flower in the early winter or early spring. But it's a bit different here in the UK, and they usually flower late summer to early autumn, or from September to October. But one of the most important things about Lithops is not to water them when they're in their leaf shedding phase. They consume all the water they need from the old sets of leaves. So all of this will start to wrinkle and go very dry and start to look a little bit like the plant's dying, but it's not. And then it will start to split and it will shoot out the new Lithops plant. But they'll enter into their winter stage of growing. So they will actually be growing inside and developing their new set of leaves. So it's important from about October up to the end of April that you don't give your Lithops any water. If you do water it, and especially if you give it a really good watering, all the way down to the bottom of the pot so it runs out, your Lithops is likely to rot and turn to mush. So over the winter it will slowly be growing its new leaves, and the old leaves on the outside will start to dry, wither and wrinkle up. And it might look like it's starting to die, but don't worry, it isn't. This is a natural process most of the time. And this happens over winter and spring. I just want to mention these Lithops seedlings have been completely grown under natural light, so I haven't used any grow lights for these, and they currently sit in my northwest facing window, which is in my living room, and that would probably account for the growth that's just been steady but gradual. So they seem to like it in that window, and I've got a couple of other Lithops that sit in that window, and the remainder of the Lithops sit upstairs in my bedroom window, which also faces the same direction but receives a little bit more sun. So when growing a Lithops indoors or in a greenhouse, you need to make sure that it's in a location where, if it's in a south-facing direction, during the peak part of the day they do need actually some shade, although they do appreciate a very bright lit location. So I'm going to show you some more Lithops plants now that I have in my collection, to show you the different sizes and the different stages they're at right now. So let's move on to these ones here next, and these featured in an unboxing video which I did back in October 2019, and when I received them I'd bought 12 Lithops, and they were young seedlings at the time, a bit of a similar size to what they are now, and I have 11 of them left, so I've only lost one in all that time, and it just shriveled up and just died back, but all of the others are doing really well. So let's take a look at each pot individually. So these are still in the same pots that I potted them up that you see in the video when I first unboxed these. So they're in those bendy pots which will need to be replaced, and I'll repot these next year now because they're at the stage now where they're starting to shoot up quite a lot, and I'd rather sit them in the correct position because at the moment they're just in these clay pebbles with a bit of cocoa coir, so I'd rather change them into a better potting mix that I'm using now. And again, you can see on this one right at the base the old leaves. So when I come to repot this, I shall remove those. So this is the second pot, and they're all of a similar size. So this is a good example to show you how the Lithops will just shoot up like that out of the pot. And you'll notice I've got them quite deeply set down into the pot, so once I repot them and they're sitting higher up, they won't need to stretch as much to get to the light. And when you come to repot them, it's best to do it up to this bright green area and leave the rest of the colour shooting out from the substrate. And a Lithops plant doesn't usually need to be fertilised at all. So when you come to pot up a Lithops, it doesn't even need to have any fertiliser. But it's down to your personal preference, and perhaps it could increase your chance of flowering, especially in the UK, if you do give it a spot of fertiliser now and then, but not too much. So this last pot is my favourite one of all the three because it's got a very special one in here. It's got a double-headed one, so that originally was a single head, and then look what it's done. It's developed two heads now, so perhaps as time goes on and it splits again, it might form another two heads. So that's a way that lithops will start to clump and grow in size. So it's bursting out there from the old set of leaves, and it was a really nice surprise to see this one develop 2 heads. And it's got a really nice patination as well on the windows. So next we'll move on to these 2 lithops, and I bought these from a place called Tony Irons Cacti. So these ones are really special ones. So this one here is called Lithops Julii Pallid, and you might notice it's in rather a large clay pot. The depth of the pot is fine, as in it's deep enough, but this was the only pot I had available at the time, so this will be potted into a smaller clay pot next year. So this one's got a really pretty colour. So this is the other side. I've just turned it around and you can see right at the base there the old crispy dry leaves. So this one has stayed completely flush with the top dressing, it's never stretched out. So that gives you an idea of the size when you compare it to my thumbnail. So again, you can see how high up this sits in the pot. So this is rather a lot higher up on the windowsill as well because of the height of the pot. So it gets a lot more light, so it's never really needed to stretch up at all. But what I have noticed with the other lithops that I'm about to show you is the difference I've seen in changing the pot. So let's take a look. So this one is Lithops Charismontana Opalina. It's a very pretty one as well, like a very pink tone. And this one only got repotted because it got knocked off the windowsill. So I've put it into one of my B&Q terracotta pots, which is the perfect height for the root system. And it really took off with its growth and started to swell up a lot more, and it just looks a lot healthier now. And you can see now it's starting to get into the stage where it's going to absorb the old leaves and we'll start to see some wrinkling. So this lithops has been potted up into my current potting substrate, and it has been top dressed with Kyadama. So I've had these lithops for quite a long time now, and I just thought I'd let you know, I just had a look on the back of the label. So this is where I got them from, and there's the website address there. And again, I actually bought mine via eBay UK. So these are the last 3 lithops plants I'm going to show you then. And these ones here are both Lithops Leslieii, and this one here is Lithops Acampi. So this one at the back I've had since September 2019, and I bought this from Meadow View Nursery. So this lithops plant is lucky to still be alive. I've had a couple of issues with this one and the one you saw just a moment ago, which was in the pink pot. They both suffered from severe water damage when they were outside in my greenhouse. The rain leaked in and caused a lot of damage to a lot of my plants. So they went through a stage where I thought they were dead, and then all of a sudden they just started to come back to life. So this is how they are now, a lot smaller than they were before, but they're doing really well. So they've still got the old leaves attached there from where they've burst out, and this is the latest growth that they're in now. But they've bounced back incredibly. So here's an overhead view of these ones. So they're looking very healthy now. They've got like a slight orange tinge to them in the coloration. So that one there in the foreground you can see has some slight wrinkling now because they're not being watered now, so they're going to start to wrinkle. That's normal. And also these ones are in a slightly different potting mix than what I'm using now, so next year I might consider repotting this one, but for the time being it seems to be happy enough. So here's those ones in the little pink pot. So this is a 5.5 centimetre pot here, sat in an outer plant holder without holes at the bottom. So again, this is in the same kind of potting mix there. And this one had the same problem as this. So these are the new heads that you can see growing now. So these are the same as the other ones, Lithops Lesliei, so it's a similar coloration. And again, there's the wrinkling skin there from where it split open and revealed the new heads. And these ones have also got some wrinkling to the skin. So if you're in the UK and you have Lithops plants and it's December, you see this wrinkling, don't be tempted to give them any water, because all you'll do is completely rot and kill your Lithops very quickly. So here's my Lithops Acampi. This one's a slightly larger one. This is probably the one with the biggest heads out of all of the ones you've seen in this video. Those dying back leaves there which are being shedded. So it's got plentiful amount of water that it needs to sustain it until next year, and it's just starting to show some wrinkling just like the other ones. So I just want to mention about bugs and pests when growing Lithops. So in all the time that I've had Lithops plants, and I've been growing them for over 2 years, from various stages, from seedling, mature plants and in between, I've never had an issue with any pests. So I've never seen mealybugs or spider mites or any other type of pest crawl onto any of my Lithops plants. So they're relatively bug and pest free. Even though some of my Lithops plants have been next to other cactus plants or succulents which have perhaps had the odd mealybug or spider mite damage, they've never ventured onto any of my Lithops plants. So these Lithops that you can see here featured in my previous video where I repotted them, and they're settling in well. So if I take the seedlings that we started the video with and put them next to these Lithops, you can see that those 2 larger ones at the front of the smaller pot look really round. So a rather different type of Lithops there. Time will tell, so as time moves on, it will be a little bit more easier to identify these Lithops. But for now, they're happy, and next year I shall do another update for you, for those of you that are interested in the Lithops. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, consider subscribing. Many of you that do watch my videos, over 65% of you, aren't actually subscribed, so perhaps consider subscribing. Bye!